This is a great question, and it's really important to discuss a little bit more what the subtle forms of emotional abuse are. But I am going to preface it with part of the problem of emotional abuse is it often starts out subtle. And so some of the statements that do turn into emotional abuse or things that an emotional abuser says to begin with that aren't necessarily abusive can later become abusive. And because it's not obvious sometimes, it's very hard to recognize emotional abuse. So in the video that this comment is coming from, I gave very clear examples, such as you're stupid, you're ugly, you're no good. Obviously abusive. But that's not where the emotional abuse often starts. It often starts in much more playful or what appears to be innocent ways. So your partner, your family member, your coworker, it doesn't matter, but I'll just say partner for ease of conversation, might say, "Oh, you really aren't the best cook, are you?" It could be playful, they could be joking, they could mean nothing negative by it. They are just commenting on your ability to cook. But if that becomes a pattern, or if they are using it in a demeaning or belittling way, then it becomes abusive. And so what is meant to appear like a joke is actually not an actual joke. And so we all joke with people that we care about. We say things like, "Oh, yep, today wasn't your best day," or "I don't know if that necessarily looks good on you." Again, those comments on their own aren't examples of emotional abuse, but for somebody who is emotionally abusive, they are using those comments as a way to control and manipulate. And so that's why it is so hard to recognize emotional abuse kind of in that build-up stage. Another way that somebody could potentially be abusive that is in a subtle way is controlling your boundaries or not paying attention to your boundaries. So you ask for something and they disrespect them, and then they try to play it off with, "Oh, it's not a big deal," or "I didn't listen to you," or "I didn't think it was that important." So they haven't respected your boundary, but they have provided a response that makes you think, okay, maybe they really didn't understand that this was my boundary. So you excuse it, you accept their response, but it is really, again, part of that build up to more obvious emotionally abusive behavior in the future. So there are lots of things that can be said that are just meant to be playful, that are meant to show just poor judgment, that aren't emotionally abusive, but those very same things can also be used to be emotionally abusive, and that is exactly why emotional abuse is so hard to notice in the beginning parts of it. So what you've got to do is you want to pay attention to how you feel. If somebody says something to you that you don't like and you provide them feedback that "I don't like that," you've got to see what they do in response to that. If they apologize, if they change their behavior, great. But if they continue to do it, or they tell you how you shouldn't feel that way, or they demean you for feeling that way, then that is going to be part of that emotional abuse, control, and manipulation. So you've got to gauge how you feel in that interaction with that person, if you feel like you're being heard, and also pay attention if you're walking on eggshells. So now whenever you are around this person, are you really cautious on what you do and say around them for concern of how it's going to be turned back on you? So if you feel like you're walking on eggshells, then that relationship is probably emotionally abusive.